Your PTSD rating isn't a finish line, it's a receipt, and most veterans never flip it over to read what else the VA owes them. Let's start with the foundation because this matters enormously for how you approach this. A secondary condition is any diagnosis that was caused by, or made significantly worse by, your service-connected condition. In this case, your PTSD. The legal and medical standard the VA uses is called nexus, which is just a fancy word for connection. You need to show that your PTSD is at least as likely as not the cause or aggravating factor of your secondary condition. That 50% or better standard is quite achievable when you have the right medical evidence and the right framing. The critical thing veterans miss is that the VA rates each condition separately. So, if PTSD is rated at 50% and you have 3 legitimate secondary conditions, each of those gets its own rating. Combined VA math can push you significantly higher, potentially into that 90 or 100% combined rating territory. Now let's talk about what those conditions are. Real quick before we get into the first category, if you want personalized help understanding your VA benefits, increasing your rating, or avoiding another denial, don't do it alone. Join our private community, Veteran Benefits Blueprint. It's where I break everything down even more, step by step, answer questions directly, and give you more knowledge and tools that have helped thousands of veterans get all the benefits they've earned. The link is in the description box below. I'd love to see you inside. The first category that I want you to pay very close attention to is cardiovascular disease. This is one of the most underrated secondary claims in the entire VA system. Research has consistently shown that chronic PTSD creates a state of prolonged physiological stress. Your nervous system is essentially stuck in fight or flight mode. Elevated cortisol, elevated adrenaline, chronic inflammation, disrupted sleep, all of these mechanisms directly stress the cardiovascular system over time. Hypertension, also known as high blood pressure, is one of the most commonly claimed secondary conditions to PTSD. Heart disease, including coronary artery disease, has also been linked in peer-reviewed literature. If you have a PTSD diagnosis, and you also have hypertension or any cardiovascular condition, you need to get a medical nexus opinion that explicitly draws that connection. The second major category is sleep disorders, and I want to be very clear here because a lot of veterans think sleep apnea is just sleep apnea. It is not that simple. Obstructive sleep apnea is a condition where your airway physically collapses during sleep. Chronic PTSD-related hyperarousal and the associated weight changes from mental health struggles can both contribute to developing sleep apnea. Beyond that, PTSD commonly causes insomnia, nightmares, and severely disrupted sleep architecture. If a veteran has documented sleep disturbances in their PTSD treatment records and later develops obstructive sleep apnea, a well-written nexus letter connecting those dots can be extremely powerful. Sleep apnea alone is rated at 50% if it requires use of a CPAP machine, which is the majority of diagnosed cases. That is one secondary claim that could instantly change your rating. The third category is gastrointestinal conditions. This is an area where the gut-brain connection is genuinely well established in medical literature. Chronic psychological stress, particularly the kind that PTSD generates, has measurable effects on gut motility, gut permeability, and the gut microbiome. Conditions like irritable bowel syndrome, gastroesophageal reflux disease, and other functional gastrointestinal disorders are seen at elevated rates in veterans with PTSD. If you have been treated for stomach problems, acid reflux, or bowel issues since your PTSD diagnosis, those treatment records are potential evidence. Get a qualified medical professional to write an opinion connecting your GI diagnosis back to the chronic stress and physiological changes caused by your PTSD. And if you're a veteran who's been denied or stuck waiting years for results, click the link in the description box below. ReMedical specializes in helping veterans like you get the medical evaluations needed to strengthen their VA claims sooner than later. It's the same starting point I started for myself, and I recommend for anyone serious about getting their VA claim approved. You can find the link in the description box below. Now, let's talk about something that is both incredibly common and incredibly underreported. Erectile dysfunction and sexual dysfunction in male veterans. This is a condition that many veterans are genuinely embarrassed to raise, and the VA is absolutely counting on that silence. PTSD affects the hormonal system, the nervous system, and the psychological relationship with intimacy in ways that directly cause and maintain sexual dysfunction. Beyond the direct biological pathways, many PTSD medications, particularly certain antidepressants used to treat PTSD, lists sexual dysfunction as a direct side effect. If a medication prescribed for your service-connected PTSD is causing this condition, that is a direct secondary claim. The VA rates erectile dysfunction separately, and there is also a special monthly compensation provision called SMCK that applies specifically to the loss of a creative organ's function. Veterans routinely skip this claim entirely. Do not be one of them. Metabolic conditions are next, and this is where things get interesting from a medical standpoint. PTSD is associated with elevated rates of type 2 diabetes, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. The mechanisms involve chronic cortisol elevation, poor sleep quality, disrupted appetite regulation, reduced physical activity secondary to mental health struggles, and in some cases the side effects of psychiatric medications. If your PTSD treatment has included atypical antipsychotics or mood stabilizers, weight gain and metabolic changes are documented side effects of those medications. That creates a direct chain from service-connected PTSD to VA-prescribed medication to metabolic condition. That chain is exactly what a secondary claim is designed to address. Musculoskeletal conditions deserve a mention here as well, particularly back pain and chronic pain syndromes. Veterans with PTSD often have altered movement patterns, chronic muscle tension, reduced physical activity, and disrupted sleep, all of which can contribute to the development or worsening of musculoskeletal problems. Central sensitization, which is a process where the nervous system becomes hypersensitized to pain signals, is documented in both PTSD and chronic pain research. If you have chronic pain and PTSD, there is a legitimate medical argument to be made that these conditions are intertwined, and a qualified physician can help you articulate that connection. I also want to briefly address thyroid dysfunction and immune system conditions because the research here is genuinely compelling. Chronic stress and trauma exposure have documented effects on immune regulation and hormonal systems including thyroid function. While this area requires careful medical evaluation and a strong nexus opinion, it is worth exploring with a qualified healthcare provider if you have received a thyroid diagnosis after your PTSD diagnosis. Now here is the part where I need to talk about the strategic side of building these claims because the diagnosis alone is not enough. The VA will not simply connect the dots for you. You need three things working together. First, you need a current diagnosis from a licensed medical provider. Second, you need your in-service event, which in this case is already established through your PTSD rating. Third, you need that nexus opinion explicitly stating that your secondary condition is at least as likely as not caused or aggravated by your service-connected PTSD. The nexus letter is where most claims succeed or fail. A generic letter from a physician who says your conditions may be related is not going to carry the weight you need. You want specific language, references to medical literature, where applicable, and a clear logical chain connecting the two diagnoses. And if you want personalized help, understanding your VA benefits, increasing your rating, or avoiding another denial, don't do it alone. Join our Veteran Benefits Blueprint private school community. The link is in the description below. Now, here is something else that veterans consistently miss. If you are already rated for PTSD and these secondary conditions have been in your medical records for years, you may be entitled to an earlier effective date going back to when those conditions were first documented. The effective date determines when your back pay starts, and that can represent a significant sum of money. This is why working with an accredited VA attorney or claims agent, not just a general VSO, can be critically important when you are filing multiple secondary claims simultaneously. Let me also address the C&P examination piece because secondary claims often trigger compensation and pension exams. During those exams, do not minimize your symptoms. Veterans are trained to tough it out and stay stoic. That is genuinely admirable, but it is devastating in a C&P context. The examiner is documenting what you tell them. If you say you're doing okay when you are not, that goes into the record and it can be used against you. Be honest, be specific, give examples of how each condition affects your daily functioning, your work, your relationships, your sleep. That specificity is what translates into accurate ratings. I want you to walk away from this video understanding one thing clearly. The VA system was not designed to make it easy for you to get everything you are owed. It was designed to require you to advocate for yourself. Secondary conditions to PTSD are one of the most powerful and underutilized tools in a veteran's claims arsenal. Cardiovascular disease, sleep apnea, gastrointestinal disorders, sexual dysfunction, metabolic conditions, chronic pain. These are not edge cases. These are conditions that hundreds of thousands of veterans are living with right now while leaving the compensation they earned on the table. Start by pulling your medical records. Identify every diagnosis you have received since your PTSD began. Then, have an honest conversation with a qualified physician about what connections exist. You serve this country. Make sure the VA serves you back. Thank you for watching. If you're tired of feeling lost in the VA benefits system, hit subscribe and join thousands of veterans and families who are finally getting the answers, support, and confidence they deserve. And make sure to check out our Unlock More VA Money playlist, linked in the description box below.